What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Natty News Daily podcast. I feel like I've been MIA for a while, but uh, we have very
We
valid
replaced
reason.
James
Yeah, we have very
with a
valid reason.
more mature individual.
Yeah, better hair for sure. Hey.
Definitely better hair.
Yeah, life's been crazy, just managing family life and dad life and all that kind of stuff. Thankfully, Dan and James have kept the ship moving forward. Obviously, I've been doing what I can, through the Instagram and stuff like that. But as far as the podcast goes, finding time to do it is a challenge. Hence why Dan and I are sitting here 7:30 on a Thursday morning. I just walked in from the gym. This guy was sleeping. As soon as I sat down and sent the Zoom link to Dan, he started rustling. So here we are. So we'll get it done. But this one's going to be a cool one, kind of a two-part episode. First part talking about Dan's season ending. We're a little behind on that because it's been a little while, but nonetheless, we'll talk about that. And then, if we got time, we'll dive into my prospective season for next year because it is quickly approaching that we would be starting prep. So, Dan, you've got the floor, man. How long are we post show now? 2 months
Yeah,
from
about
Mr. A.
close to 8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had three shows: WMBF Ontario, WMBF Pro Universe,
Yep.
not the original plan, but the
Yeah. Yeah.
execution nonetheless, and then finished off at Mr. America. So let's go back to the kickoff at WMBF Ontario. Maybe just run down. Obviously, you don't need to go through the whole prep. Maybe the last couple weeks leading up to that, where you were, how you were feeling, plan of action.
Yeah. So I mean, I will just start like from the beginning. I did start prep in March, so Ontario was in September, so had been prepping for a good bit of time. Started prep about 198 pounds. And then yeah, leading into Ontario a few weeks out, I was like low 170s, like 172, 173. And I know I discussed, before I started my prep that I wanted to get down I wanted to get sub 170. So
Right.
I started seeing sub 170s like right before Ontario,
Hmm.
which my weight tends to lag anyway, so the visuals were kind of indicative that it was there, but
Yep.
it's good to see those numbers. But yeah, I mean, a few weeks out, um, I had some doubts. I had some uncertainties going into that show. I knew who was competing. I'm not usually one to chase down who's
It's a
competing, but
slippery slope.
well, I'm not, but I follow you.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, just for reference, what Dan's referring to is like shadow creeping people that you're going to be competing against. And we all know that everybody looks great on Instagram because they're
Yeah,
posting the best photos and you're one of the few
yeah,
that posts like the honest front lighting, morning posing that's like likely the least uh, complimentary, right? But most people aren't doing that. They're posting I mean, look at me, right? Like the post workout wicked pump looking double the
yeah.
size. So that can mess with your head a bit, right? Which, even you as someone who is well into the sport, who knows that, fell into that trap, right? And like you said, it's kind of unavoidable with you following me, you following a lot of my clients, my athletes that were also doing that show. It's like seeing a few people, you're
That's
like,
ex exactly
yeah,
it. It was actually unavoidable. I
it was
couldn't open
impossible. Yeah.
Instagram.
Unless you mute me.
Yeah, exactly. But you were harassing me anyway, so.
Yeah. I was stoking the fire.
But yeah, I mean, and I knew like leading in, I was like a lot of the photos I was posting were not in like great lighting, in crazy lighting.
Yep.
Um, so to a certain degree, I kind of knew that, but I saw some of what guys did look like in good lighting, and they look
Yep.
pretty crazy. So especially
Yep.
Angelo, like I went and thought I I didn't think I really was going to beat Angelo, but
Yeah. You two were the two
um
that I was most excited to see side by side for sure.
yeah, I mean yeah, you were hyping that up behind the scenes. So
Oh, for sure.
but yeah, so going to that show felt I thought I was going to take second to Angelo. I straight up just thought I was going to.
Yep.
Um but showed up and I thought I brought a pretty darn good look to the show, and
Yeah. And that's a
um
prime
it
example,
was
just quickly, Dan. That's a prime example of everybody can look really good by themselves. Large
yeah.
athletes, small athletes, whatever. Everybody can look good on their own, right? And clients will send me photos of somebody and be like, "This guy looks crazy. This guy looks crazy." And I'm like, "For sure." but let's see him in the lineup. Let's see him under the stage lights. Let's see him pose for pose for pose beside you, because that's when everything changes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
if you were to compare, just using Angelo as an example, if you were to compare photos of you two side by side, it's like, oh shit, there might be some areas where Dan's got him, might be some areas where Angelo's got him, and certain muscle groups. But you get on stage and you pose and you stand side by side. Now you're starting to see where those gaps can be gained, which you did, right? There was poses that you
Yeah.
very handedly won. There was things you did on stage that accentuated your look, which is all things that you don't see in photos of individual people, right? We see that, let's talk about what everybody will know. Talk about the Olympia really quick. People will be posting photos. Oh, Samson's got it. Oh, Hottie's got it. Oh, Derek's got it. But they're only
Yeah.
posting singular shots. But then
Yeah.
when you see them side by
Next
side
to
and
each
you see
other.
you
Yeah.
see them next to each other, then it's like, oh, this is what the judges are talking about. But anyways,
Yeah.
continue on.
And when you see people in real life, it's just a different ball game. Because I got numerous comments at Ontario and Universe, like, yeah, like I thought you looked good, but you looked a lot bigger in person than I realized.
Oh yeah, I as
I was
being
happy
one
about
of your
that.
closest friends who sees photos of you. I see photos of Dan regularly. And seeing you in person, you were, right? You, not only from a physique standpoint, but you're posing, right? You posed
Yeah.
big, you took up as much space on stage as you can. And that's, again, going back to Angelo, who's my client, that's something that I was on his case about the whole prep, is that you
Yeah.
pose small, you know what I mean? And was that a factor that caused him to probably come second to you? For sure, right? Definitely one of them, outside of
Yeah.
the
You
physique
told me
area.
that going in, and I had that in my mind on stage. Like, I need to pose big. I need to pose big. This is
Well,
where I can.
and that's the incident we're talking about specifically, but as a general rule of thumb for people listening, right? Like, you could be 150 pounds or 190 pounds and you still want to pose like you're 250, right? Like, pose big. Yeah. Pose
Yeah.
big, bud.
But yeah, the posing definitely made a big difference in my prep. I work with a posing coach every week, and I pose myself every morning. And
Yeah.
um,
You drilled
you know,
that, right? And it paid off.
helping Emily's help. I mean, I don't think I would have won that show without the posing work that I did this year. So
Yep.
definitely made a
Yep.
big difference. Yeah,
Yeah. You would have had a harder time for sure if you weren't posing as good as you were, right? Like,
yeah,
physique aside, maybe it wasn't a clear cut every pose was yours, but maybe you had enough to win, and had you not have practiced posing,
yeah,
you might have lost a shot or two, which could have changed the whole outcome, right? Like, that's how bodybuilding works, and these are things that you and I, as experienced athletes, we understand and we know. But for newer athletes that may be listening to this, like, you can, you know, obviously Dan's case is maybe win or lose, but you could gain or lose placings, gain or lose a pro status just from not posing as best as you could. You may have an incredible physique, Dan, as you do, but if you don't display it, who's
what
going to
does it
know?
matter? Yeah,
Well, yeah, what's it matter? The judges, they're not going to be like, oh, well, he could look really good if he posed better. Like, no, they're looking at what you're
what
displaying.
they show. Yeah, what you show. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly right.
Yep. No, 100%. So you come out of
So
that with the win in the class, come out of that with the pro card, which is
yeah, that
obviously,
was an amazing day, and we covered it, kind of,
yep.
recapped it. But that I mean, that was a really special day for me.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
really
Yep.
incredible day to share it with you guys and share it with
Yep. Of all
all the
shows to do
friends
it at,
there.
right?
With Christine and Lauren, and do it in front with Leo and Charlotte. Like, it was just
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Very
day,
feel
top to
good.
bottom, was just incredible.
Yep. No, 100%.
Amazing.
So then plan was, what's the amateur called? Not Pro Universe. What's the amateur
Natural
one?
Mania. Yep.
Natural Mania. So the plan was Natural Mania, right? After doing
Yep.
WMBF Ontario. Obviously Dan had a contingency of like, hey, if I'm not turning pro at Ontario, gonna take another crack at it at Natural Mania. But conveniently, it is also
Pro Am.
a pro am, right? So because
Yep.
Dan turned pro, he was able to jump right in pro debut 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks later.
No, it was a week later. Literally a week later.
Oh shit, it was a week later. So okay, so right back to back into peak week. What was that all about?
Yeah, so yeah, I sent Nancy quick note, said, "Hey, switch my registration to pro."
Yeah, yeah.
Said, "Cool, good deal." I think I saved money that way because pro is more expensive to go sign up.
Hack the system.
Hack the system. That's the way to do it. Um, but yeah, I mean, came right out of Ontario into essentially another peak week. I think I dug for 2 days, 3 days, something like
Hmm.
that.
Yep.
I started my peak a little bit. I think I started my peak on Wednesday rather than Tuesday because obviously coming out of Ontario wasn't super flat. But
Yeah.
um, mentally, I was definitely like there was definitely a burden lifted off of me coming out of
Sure.
Ontario in terms of just winning that pro card and
Yep.
notching that off and like
I can feel
okay,
that. I know what that feels like.
that
It's heavy.
pressure was definitely taken off of me.
Yeah.
Because the big objective there was, you know, my two objectives were to, win a WNBF Pro card and then do well at Mr. America top 50%, which we'll cover in a bit. But yeah, and I mean with that, like there was just so much in the air, up in the air. Like I was like, okay, I do Ontario. If I don't win Ontario, which I honestly, like I said, did not expect to win. I thought I was going to take second.
Hmm.
Um, and because I knew there was one pro card, that's it.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's like, okay, I'm signed up for Natural Mania the next weekend, but if that doesn't go, like, do I have to? I'm like also like on the lookout for like other potential shows and all this other, like, okay, if I go, I can go to this show, go to that show. Like, there's just a lot of like
Up in the air, right?
unknown there. Not even unknown, like, am I going to win it? But like, how is my season going to look? What shows
Yeah.
am I going to
Yeah.
do? Like,
What road am I taking, right?
what road am I taking? Exactly right. So that took all that pressure off, and then I was like, okay, well, now
Here
I
we
got
go.
signed up for to do my pro debut at the Universe. I don't have to worry about other shows because I thought, and then I mean, I'll jump ahead quickly since it's on the topic because I was like, do I even bother plugging in shows? And I like just debated back and forth. I talked to some people that wanted me to do this show, that show,
Mhm.
not knocking them anyway, but I was just like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna focus on the shows that matter and like just
Yep.
rather than fly to a show to just to do it. Let's
Yeah.
keep the priorities the priorities. I think that's an important thing to. I mean, you kind of have to do that anyways, but um, there's always going to be so many competing priorities within a season. Like, which organization do you want to compete with? What pro cards
Yeah.
do you want to pursue? What pro shows do you want to do? Like,
Yep.
there's a million different shows and routes you can take. So, um, yeah, you just gotta have to prioritize, appropriately. So,
Yep. Yep. No,
uh,
100%.
but yeah, did the pro universe that following week. I think some of the just taking the pressure off definitely helped. I had a really really good peak for that one. I had a really good peak for Ontario too.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but I tightened up a little bit even more with a couple days of digging and something about that like just getting a peek in me and improve my look just within a week. So I thought I brought an even better look to Universe. Had no expectations going in.
Mhm.
I battled it out with some good pros.
Yep. Yep.
Um, took fourth of six. I think Joe and I were neck and neck. Joe Lacera,
Yep.
who a cool dude. We've known each other for a while from Mr. America and like otherwise.
For sure.
He edged me, took third of four. So him and I were, I think I'd say neck and neck, but he took the W over me.
Hmm.
Well, not W in the show, but W over me.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, which I don't have any complaints about. He's a great pro.
Yeah. That was a good lineup. Good pro debut for you, right? A mix of
Yeah,
different crops of athletes. Not a massive show, but not a, one or two guys for the pro show, right? So,
yeah,
good opportunity to get into the ranks and see where at least you land within that lineup, right?
yeah. And the stage lighting was good. The photography was really
Photos
good.
were
So
good.
actually, my best photos were from that show. So
Yep. Yep. No, for sure. And then Mr. A. So that was September 14th, it would have been 13th, 14th, somewhere around there.
yeah, it was like the 14th was Pro Universe, and then Mr. America was what the 10th or so.
So you had
Yeah,
roughly a 3 to 4 week
I had
gap.
3 week turnaround. Yeah.
Yep.
So I had a little bit of time to did a little bit more digging. Saw some like 165-ish
Yep.
on the scale. I think that was the lowest I saw. Um, think my peak weight ended up being like 168.
Hmm.
Um, See, I went into that one. That was another big one. Wanted to place in that top 50%,
Yep.
um, which was the only goal I was not able to achieve this year, unfortunately. So, um, I in my class, nine of us, I took sixth, um, which I'm a little bittersweet about, and have some. I think I could have gotten a better look in terms of
Like from the judges.
from the judges, which I'll just say that I never stood next to Joe, who took fifth. I'll
Right.
just
Yeah.
leave it at that. And
Yep.
not saying like, hey, I should have taken higher, but I didn't stand next to the guy who took
Yep.
one placing higher than me, which, yeah, take that
Yeah.
as you will.
Yeah, and that's obviously the struggle sometimes with judging, right? Is different judging panels will judge differently. They'll move athletes around differently, and there was kind of some interesting like moves with how that show was judged that
Yeah,
I'm sitting there stage side on commentary, and I'm like, well, why are you moving that group here? Why are you only pulling these guys, right? Obviously that's nothing you can control over, and
yeah.
had you have been compared differently, maybe it would have reflected the placings a little bit. So would you say, like, safe to say maybe fifth would have been like the best outcome?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just, yeah, I think fifth would have been. I just would have. I think I would have felt better about it
sure.
if I got a fair look,
That's
right?
fair.
And then
Yep.
took a fair six, like, okay, fair play. But
Yeah. There's still
that I
that
feel
kind
like
of
I just
question
didn't.
of
Yeah,
5'6".
it was. Yeah, like I said, it wasn't. It was. I call it. Well, I said judging, but I think it's more the way that the call outs were conducted,
Yeah.
uh, not necessarily the judging itself. Um,
Yep.
but um, a little bit bittersweet coming out of that. Just like I said, just that A, I didn't accomplish goal, but probably B, more importantly, that I didn't feel like I got quite a fair shake. But is what it is. Technically,
Yep.
a fifth of nine would have been not top 50% anyways, but would have been closer. But
Just needed that 4.5 placing, Dan.
yeah, I know. But
Yep.
I thought I brought a good look to that show. Whether it was better than the universe, I'm not 100% certain, but I think it was. It's hard to say because the universe lighting and photos and such were really good, but um, I think my Mr. America look was my best look, but hard to say for sure.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. Nice. Good
But
season. So just I guess to wrap it up, what's the plan of action now as far as like any tentative timelines, any okay, next season I want to maybe check off ABC. Have those thoughts crossed your mind at all?
yes. So right now sitting, yeah, 8 weeks post show, been running a reverse, which has been going really well. Um, it's important to note that I didn't go into this off season rundown, like particularly rundown. Like I could have extended my season further, dug a little bit more, but it wasn't worth it for the goals that I had.
Yep.
Um, but tentative next season would be, I would say 2026 or 2027. I know which way that you're pressuring me to, you're pressuring me to do, which um, typically I've done the 3 year turnaround between seasons. But I know based on how I feel now and felt coming out of that show and
Yep.
how recovery is going and such, I definitely could do a 2 year turnaround. Um, I
Yeah.
probably could compete next year if I really wanted to,
Yeah,
but
that's
I'm
something
not going to do
that's
that because I still got a recovery turnaround. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
know I could do it 2 years.
You see that with athletes that do it longer, and they learn how to handle prep better. They prep more effectively. So those gaps, obviously from an improvement standpoint, we know the longer you do this, the less, maybe, like when I think of another 3-year gap of improvements, like, is it going to be that much substantial versus the last like 2-3 year spans, right? So from a physique standpoint, it's like, well, I'm probably like in that upper like 80% of what I could physically accomplish. So maybe I only need that year and a half, 2 years of like make those incremental improvements, compete again, make those incremental improvements, compete again. Because then it's like, okay, well, what's my what's my goals in the sport as far as what else I can do? Well, sharing the stage with certain people is something that I want to check off, right? There's shows I want to do. So it's like, well, if I'm only going to compete every 3 years, 4 years, whatever it may be, I'm shortening those opportunities. You know what I mean? Outside of just like trying to build my physique. You know what I mean? Like you and James got to compete side by side. I've still
Yeah.
yet to share the stage with either one of you. There's other people that I want to compete with. I was talking to Steve the other day, and he was saying maybe he's eyeing up 2027, and I'm like, well, that would be something that would be awesome. You know what I mean? So those are the things that cross my mind too.
Yeah, yeah, it's always kind of a, cost of like, cashing out and how often you cash out.
Totally. Yep.
In terms of like improvement, it's not necessarily much of a thought in that regard, but for me, it's like more so, I feel like I can turn around and get in. I'm already, I feel like in a productive
In a
off season
productive spot.
stretch.
Yeah.
Um, and like from a recovery standpoint, I didn't have as big of a hole, um, especially like hormonally, not
Yeah.
nearly as big of a hole as I've had in prior seasons. So,
Yeah.
um,
Because your
but
last prep, it hit you hard, right? So if you have
last two
three,
preps, yeah,
yeah. So if
both,
you have 3 years, but 6 or 7 months of that is just trying to get your body back to normal,
yeah,
that takes away from your off season. Whereas maybe you have a 2 year gap, but you only need 2 months to get back to normal. Now, proportionately speaking, you probably
yeah,
have just as much, if not more time to get better, right?
yeah. So just from like multiple perspectives, I feel like my recovery turnaround is just expedited. So,
Yeah.
um, which I think, I talked about it a little bit with James, but I think from a hormonal standpoint, I think some of the measures I took, the supplementation that I used,
Test.
definitely helped. But yeah, that's
Cool.
yeah, 2 or 3 years. But
Any shows in particular?
yeah, so I have thought about that. The next season I would do likely would include Worlds.
Nice.
Um, so this year I opted not to do Worlds. I kind of alluded to it, but I opted to shut my season down because I was like, Worlds is another 6 weeks, and I was like, is
Yeah.
it worth? I was like, no, it's
And
not
that was
worth
a stacked worlds. Like that would have been
stacked
quite
Worlds.
the test for you.
Yeah, yeah. Not that wouldn't really bother me. I don't
No, I
mind
don't mean that
trying
in
to.
a negative standpoint.
No,
I
no.
just mean like you would have went up there and it would have been, here we go. Like you are now against the best of the best of the
Yeah,
best,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
Like it would have been
Yeah.
quite the experience.
Oh yeah, it would have been awesome. And if it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I would have done
Just
it.
send
100% would have done it.
it. Yeah.
But I was like, is it worth digging for another 6 weeks and holding myself here 6 weeks and then digging myself a bigger hole? And I was like, no, it's not. It's worth just deferring that to a future year. And Worlds was never in my thoughts about the
Yeah.
season anyways. But next season, I intend to kind of craft a season that is kind of built around,
Yeah.
not around, well, around to a certain degree. Obviously, there's other shows, but more with that as an objective to do Worlds. So,
Yep. Yep. That
would
that
likely
fall
start my
timeline.
season in early October, uh, either with Mr. America or a WNBF Pro show before Mr. America because I would have to qualify for Worlds, so I just need to do a WNBF Pro show.
Yep.
I know that the Washington State Natural is typically the week before Mr. America, but I know this coming year it's moved to July-ish. So that kind of has me thinking like, I don't know, maybe I'll start with Mr. America and then do
We
another.
do Calgary.
Actually, Calgary was on my show list too. So actually, yeah, you're right. Yeah, my intent. But now Calgary overlaps with Mr. America this coming year.
Ah,
So
yeah, that's true.
it's like, yeah,
So many variables. We got 3 years to
so
figure it out.
there's a lot of variables. Yeah, I don't need to think about it now. But yeah, the shows that I would think about doing, Mr. America will 100% be on my schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Worlds will 100% be on my schedule. And then Calgary will be on my schedule contingent upon
Time.
it not overlapping with
Yeah.
Mr. America. And then Washington State would be on my schedule, but it sounds like I don't know, unless they move it back to October. But
Yeah. A lot
who
of up in the
knows?
airs right
There's
now.
a lot of up in the airs, but
Probably an
um,
IFBB pro qualifier at this rate.
it,
Pittsburgh, bro.
I'm not gonna rule it out. So, but yeah, but it's
Sweet.
always like I said, competing priorities. So
Yeah.
we'll see
Yeah. Yeah.
what happens. But yeah, I would start my season more in that October time frame
Yeah. Makes
so that I
sense.
can compete at Worlds in November rather than starting in September. But yeah,
Cool.
that's kind of the tentative plan. So
Right on.
yeah, off season in now, and
Time to grow.
that's right.
All right.
Oh, let's get into your stuff now. You
It's
said
my
you're
turn.
not in prep, started prep. You basically started prep though.
I've been all over the place. Well, it just, just kind of what you just touched on is shows shuffling around and timelines shuffling around and priorities, trying to figure out what the main objectives are has kind of, you know, the last probably 8 weeks has been
2025
kind.
has really been in flux, I'll tell
There's
you that.
so many things up in the air right now, different shows, different opportunities, different pathways, different future potential pathways, and these are all things that like I consider outside of just like I want to compete. It's like, well, where do I want to compete? Why do I want to compete there? What can that do for me from a business standpoint? What can that do for me from a competitive standpoint? Natty News, like all these, like I throw all those hats on when I try to figure out where I want to compete, which is challenging, right? Because you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I check those boxes the most effective way possible and get my intrinsic competitive goals, but also the business goals, the coaching goals, that kind of stuff, right? So,
Yeah, why
um,
don't you get into the details of some of that? I know we've talked about it, one on one before, but I think
yeah,
listeners might
sure,
like that insight as to, let's talk details of orgs and
yeah,
show timelines and
yeah.
um,
So I'm sure any coach can echo this statement where like when you're prepping, you post the shredded photos, you're making the changes, all this kind of stuff. Like there's more traction on your social media, right? Which then in turn often turns into more business, right? People see you kind of practicing what you preach and getting success from that. If I look back at 2022, 4 shows, 4 wins, multiple pro cards, very regularly posting and documenting and sharing, right? And that just continued to see. I would say that like 21, 22 was kind of when my business really solidified itself, right? And that's no accident of me prepping alongside that, right? And this is something that Cliff and I have talked about where it's like, okay, what what else can I accomplish in prep outside of just the competitive things? And it's like, well, you can probably take your business up a notch or at least build more awareness around it, which then in turn can turn into more clients. So locally, the the CPA, the sister organization to the NPC, is the big one, right? That's what everybody knows. Although WMBF is growing locally, OCB is planning to move in. The NPAA is the Canadian affiliate under the IPE. So there's a lot of natural organizations that are getting into the market, but right now the CPA is and probably will be for a long time, potentially permanently, with how things are changing.
yeah.
They'll have the market share. They'll have the stranglehold. So for me, it's like, well, how do I get a piece of that as a coach more than I already have, right? This is not me saying like, oh, I'm struggling business wise. Like that's not the case, but how do
Yeah.
I continue to cement
Solidify.
myself, solidify myself, right? And it's hard to deny competing within that organization, progressing within that organization wouldn't have its benefits. So when I look at my season, that's a consideration, right? Is like, yes, I have these competitive aspirations, but it's like, well, if I do show ABC, then that may really uptick the personal brand, the coaching, this and that, right? So that's kind of where that dice tends to roll for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the potential negative implications that it could have on your personal brand or negative perceptions? I know that there's a lot of butting heads and such, Do you want to get into that
I mean,
from a high level, at least? Maybe not get into details, but
yeah, there's obviously um, the organizations don't get along. We know that. I think most people are really starting to see that. without needing to be like in the weeds behind the scenes. So there's always those, well, why are you competing with them? Why are you competing in this show? And this isn't just strictly talking about the CPA NPC. It's even other natural organizations that are supposed to be coexisting that typically don't get along, right? And this is again like shout out to Cliff Wilson, my coach, because he's helped me through a lot of these internal conversations, which has been
Yeah, yeah,
great.
extensive
And
conversation. Yeah,
his thing that's always stuck out on me is bet on yourself with regards to where you choose to compete, because you'll get to a point where you are enough of a position in the industry where most organizations, most people aren't going to be like, no, you can't play with us anymore, right? And
yeah,
and we see that as Natty News, and I think conveniently that's helped my case in that front with how big Natty News has gotten, where it's like, hey, um, you know, if you're going to come compete, we'd love to have you. If you're going to compete with other organizations, it's not going to hurt you, and whether that's good or bad, people want to say it's politics. I mean, to a certain degree, I guess it is, that there is some favoritism with that kind of stuff, but I haven't had any experiences yet as far as people turning a blind eye to certain rules, restrictions, this, that, and the other, because I haven't competed yet. I really don't know what that's going to look like next year as far as if you compete here, you can't compete here. If you compete here, you're not invited back. Like, I don't know what that looks like yet. And I'm just going to kind of stick to my guns with what I'm going to do and let the chips fall where they may. You know what I mean? Like, I know what I think I'm going to do that's best for me, that's best for my business, which is then best for my family, and that's all I really am concerned about. If people don't like certain decisions that I make as far as where I'm competing, that's their problem, not mine.
yeah. And I think it's important for you to articulate that, and you know, be a leader in that regard too. And because I think you see people getting bullied around by organizations,
For
and
sure. And I feel like these organizations forget we're paying to do this. So
yeah,
when you say, "Oh, you have to do this show to compete, or you have to do this show to stay a pro or turn a pro or whatever," you're forgetting that I have to, and this is me speaking for 99% of athletes, I have to take time off work, I have to travel, I have to pay for hotels. A lot of times as you move up the ranks, like you've got to pay for flights and stuff because the pro shows aren't as frequent and for a lot of people not as geographically close. Like I don't have any local pro shows. Like I either have to fly to Calgary, which is hella expensive here in Canada, or I have to go down into the States, right, which is no cheaper. So those are factors that I think these organizations forget about, that you're locking athletes in with these rules that sometimes like I don't have. I would love to do the show, but maybe I can't
yeah.
spend $2,000 in travel, take time off work, take time away from my family. I've got an 8-month old you just saw on the podcast. Like these are things that I feel like these figureheads don't consider. It's like, oh, well, you have to do this show. Well, great, but maybe I can't. You know what I mean? And now it's like for me, I want to compete locally for friends and family. I want to compete locally for the cost saving benefits of it, right? Like these are the things that people ignore, which is not cool.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's seen as like I don't think I think fellow athletes get it, but like as a political statement that you compete at XYZ show, but there's so many factors to it beyond just what organization is putting on. It's
That's right.
where is it, logistics, how much is it going to cost? Is it going to take time away from my family? Am I going to be able to compete with this person, that person, that person? Are my family and friends going to be able to see me compete? Because that's an amazing experience to be able to. That's something I got to have at
Yeah.
Ontario with you guys, and then at Mr. America, my whole family came to Mr. America. It's like that was amazing. Like that all factors in the show lighting, the stage photos. Like there's lots of factors beyond, obviously what organization. matters, right? Like that influences like my past season. Like I
Hmm.
picked WNBF shows or INBF shows because I
Yep.
wanted a WNBF pro card. That matters. It's a factor, but it's one of many factors. I think sometimes people take it personally when
Yeah. Yep.
competes at another organization or another show. It's like it's not necessarily shot at your organization. It's just there's a
You're
lot of
juggling
factors.
so many things to determine
Yeah.
where you compete. And I have a perfect example of this. So next year, I want to make my WMBF pro debut. I
Yep.
want to do that. Where and when has been extremely hard to figure out because I'm doing like a summer season, right? Basically July, August, maybe September. We'll see how I feel. But when I look at the schedule, it's like, well, what are my options? Well,
Yep.
you could do the Muscle Mayhem, which is in California. I think it's historically in July, right? So timing wise, makes sense. But I got to get to California, which is going to cost me thousands of dollars between flights, travel, time off work, this and that. But then, and this is something that maybe people don't think about once you kind of get outside the amateur shows that are always a typically decent turnout. Last year, there was one pro. So for me, as a competitor, I don't want to go to a show, pay all this money, and
Be the
be
only
the,
one there.
well, God forbid, be the only one there, but maybe like one of two, one of three. That's not that's not going to scratch my itch, right? I want to go up there, like
Yep.
you did, right? Like you were in a lineup of what'd you say, nine,
It
six
which at which show?
for Pro Universe,
Six.
six, right? I could rest easy competing against six pros, right? Just because I
Yep.
know the pro shows typically like you're getting smaller turnouts compared to amateurs, but like I don't want to go up there with one person or just by myself and
Yeah.
again spend, I looked at it this year just to price it out just based on flight costs and stuff like that. Like for me to fly to California is like $1,500 per ticket.
Yeah.
So if me and Carrie fly out, if I go with my wife, leave the baby with grandma, so we're 3 grand in the hole, and then we got to pay for hotel and stuff. We're not just gonna fly there Friday night and come home Sunday night after the show. Like we got to stay for probably 5 days. I'm dropping like $3,000 or $4,000 to be the only one on stage potentially. Like, no, I'm not a fan of that, right? And could that change? Like, I could go next year and there could be 12 pros. There could be, but these are things that you gotta consider,
Yeah.
right? So, um, yeah, juggling multiple different things to determine where and when.
Absolutely. I think it's just an important thing to talk about and to be vocal about,
Yeah, yeah,
platform that we have.
for
So
sure.
let's talk about your season itself. So
So as
talking
far
kind
as
of
like,
July through September, maybe a little later. I know you. Yeah.
yeah, I would say I've got 6 shows that I've tentatively mapped out.
Yeah.
The duration of, and thankfully the main ones are kind of right stacked at the beginning, and then like of importance to me, and then it kind of trickles down. I wouldn't say like not important, but I as an athlete, um, as a husband, as a father, like these are the things that also weigh in my mind, right? So if I've been prepping for 30 weeks, bang out a season that's, maybe an 8 week duration, and there's maybe a show or two that's still on the cards, but I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna call it here. I have no shame in that. It used to really weigh on me as far as like,
Yeah.
stopping early or whatever, but life's different now, and I need to look out for the people that I love and the situations around me outside of prep, right? So, the as it stands right now, I am as of this coming weekend. So we're recording this Thursday. So this Saturday, I believe, is 31 weeks until the planned opener, which is mid July. Um, so I had pre-prep down pretty much a year ago from 195 to 175. So I ripped off 20 pounds. That took longer and was more of a dig than historically, but during that time we had a baby, we were raising a newborn, so all those factors played into that, but we got the job done. And now I've been holding comfortably, reversing calories up slowly, and I'm holding comfortably basically 171, 172. The odd day I might jump to 173, but it seems to chill between 171 and 172, 171.1 as of this morning. And we've brought my calories up from a low of 2300 now just shy of 32, which is, to me, that's wild to be able to do that. But fast forward, baby is sleeping good, which is a game changer, right?
Yeah.
My lifestyle is no different, right? Like I have the home gym, so training hasn't really taken a hit. I still work like normal, which is great. Nutrition wise, operating the same. So we're in a good spot. I don't know when we're gonna fire things up. I looked back at last prep and I was around this body weight at 27, 20, 28 weeks out. So we're a little bit ahead of pace, which is great.
Yeah.
Better body comp for sure, which is great. And
I mean, you should be a few pounds ahead muscularity wise too.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's the glaring. Like even if conditioning is the same, which I think I might be a bit tighter right now, but even if conditioning is the same, I'm definitely bigger across a lot of different muscle groups, which is obviously the big goal. We love that. So I don't know when we're gonna pull the trigger. I just wait for Cliff's word on that. It is the 5th of December right now, so I would love if we can squeak 20 more days and get past Christmas before we actually enter a deficit. I mean, I know I could, if he's like this week, like, hey, we're going to start prep. Like, I know Christmas is Christmas. Like, I have zero issues managing that. But it would be kind of nice to just continue to roll these 171s for another 3 weeks, 2, 3 weeks, and then
Yeah.
kind of kick prep off around 28, 29 weeks out officially. But that'll be his call to make. And when he says jump, I'll jump.
Yeah, so a few things that comments is you're in a very good spot right now. I think, you said it was a little bit trickier to dig, longer dig than
Yeah,
historically,
I think it was 20 weeks it took me to,
but
I
right
mean,
now
that's
you've
a
settled
pound a
in,
week.
feel really good in those low 170s. Second thing is what was your stage weight in what was it, 20? It was
22.
2022. Yeah, 2022. And then what would you say is so lay out your shows itself and maybe prioritize them, say like
Yep.
what's the highest priority? Where would you want to be, quote unquote, 100%?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So last prep, I'm just gonna say mid 150s is where I'm on stage. I don't call depleted lows because they're kind of a skewed number, right? Like I touched
Yeah.
149 ahead of WMBF, which was my last pro or my last show.
But
But I carved up by Saturday morning. I was 158, so nine
you and a
pounds
lot of Cliffs guys end up like there's a big spread between the depleted weights and the
for sure. Yeah, like that's
it's
almost a
like for
10
me
pound
it was like a
differential.
3 pound spread, but for you and a lot of other guys, it's yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
meeting mid 150s. Yeah.
let's call it 155 for simple math. Looking at how I am now, if I can step on stage 160, 162, loaded up, I think that will be quite the look, which is awesome. Which would be a good kind of three,
Yeah.
4 pound probably muscularity jump with tighter. I know we can get tighter. I was pretty dialed in, but Cliff has said in previous check-ins the last little while that we're gonna kind of swing for the fences next year as far as conditioning levels go, which I know I can do. I know there's even a pound off those lows last time would have been just that little bit of lower back, maybe a little bit off the upper quad. Like those are the last little pieces of the puzzle, right? As far as shows go, like you alluded to earlier, the WNBF Washington State sounds like it's shifting, which is conveniently going to be probably the season opener, which is July 12th, is I believe what the date will be. That's obviously great. If I can open at WNBF Pro Show and be at that like 85-90% ready, I will be very happy about that because that was the kind of floating show that I was like, I don't know where or when or if I'm going to be able to do this
Yeah.
WNBF Pro debut. And Washington State historically has good turnouts, good photos, good lighting. Perfect. Checks all my boxes.
Yeah.
And like reasonably driving distance is like 7.5 hours to drive. Carrie and I can rip down on a Thursday, take our time, carb load on Friday, compete on Saturday, drive home Sunday. That we can do. No problem.
For
Um,
Washington?
yeah.
Isn't it in Washington State? Isn't that out way west?
I don't know.
Did you look where it is on a map?
Maybe I looked at a wrong Washington.
It, yeah, I don't know where you're looking at. Washington State's all the way out on the west coast.
I'm
So
Canadian,
not
so
far
what do
from
I know?
California. Well, it's a little far from California, but it's yeah, it might be more extensive. But anyways, we don't need
Anyways, we'll figure that out when the time
yeah.
comes. Um,
Logistically, yeah. But
yeah,
like you said, like you alluded to earlier, if it's, good turnouts, like you can, even if it's, logistically a lot, it's like, okay, the trade-off might be
it'll
worth
probably
it.
be worth it, right?
Yeah.
So that's so WNBF Pro debut, and then Natural Canada Pro qualifier within the CPA under the IFBB. Ooh, people are gonna freak out. That is checking a lot of boxes, not only from a competitive standpoint, but like we touched on earlier, as far as locally, business wise, friends and family being able to come. I know and I really want that kind of memory stamped of like 30 friends, family, clients in the audience, like making noise when I'm on stage. I
Yeah.
really want that feeling. I want that memory. Kind of like when you and James came to my shows in 2022, right? Like that was core memory unlocked for sure. So, and then with the way things are going, natural IFBB Pro card would be pretty cool. I think that is very possible. I very much believe I can do it.
So what's
And
the path to that then? Why don't you
so I
lay
have
that out?
to so I have to qualify. I have to
Yeah.
do a regional qualifier, top three in an open class. Not concerned about that at all. Where and when I do that, I still am undetermined because not to brag, but like conditioning standards are kind of the glaring weakness, I would say, within the CPA. There's very, very few guys, even at that national level, that are truly, truly dug out. So as I'm plucking away through April, May, June, I might just hop in something and get a qualification and then be cool. Like just
Yeah.
rock up on a
Take that off of your plate.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of check that off, right? There's no shortage of options in April, May, June, July. So I might
But
just
the Natural Canada Pro qualifier would qualify you, right?
no, that's to turn pro.
That's the term pro. Okay, so that's actually you have to qualify for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one where you can get your
That's
card
in what time? When is that again?
first week of August.
First week of August.
So
Okay.
that's where we're gonna basically from the last 3 weeks of July is like 85, 90, 95, 100% for that show. That is the I've told Cliff that's the non-negotiable. After that, whatever happens happens. If I fade a little bit, if I get tired for the subsequent shows, not overly concerned about it because I want to be 1,000% best Leroy ever for that show.
Yeah.
I'm flying Cliff in, like we're throwing all
Oh
the
shit.
yeah. We're so he'll be there on the Friday, Saturday to make sure everything's dialed in. I'm not I'm not missing for that show. So yeah. So as far as qualifying for that, I will do bodybuilding and classic. I will do both. I'm gonna take two shots at it because you can get a card in. Hell, you can get both cards if you're that good. Um,
Yep.
so like I said, I'm going
Which
to
sure you would you want more if you had to put
bodybuilding.
bodybuilding?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a purist. I think I have the ability to do both. I really do. I
You have the
think
structure to do classic, but
yeah, I think
like
I have
like
the
we
structure to
talked
do
about,
it.
like a good classic competitor is a good bodybuilder. Not
Yeah,
necessarily the other way around, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But with how they judge, there's a couple guys that I know. I know I can edge them on conditioning and keep up with them muscularity wise, but shape wise, like they might squeak me a little bit.
Really?
Just like, yeah, like just like their waist maybe an inch smaller and their clavicles maybe half an inch bigger. Like that's it, but that can be the difference maker. I know I can get them on conditioning. I know I can keep up with them muscularity wise and in some muscle groups knock them muscularity wise. But it's the shape one. Posing wise, I know I can hang with the best of them. So,
I haven't seen these guys, but I feel like you might be underselling your own shape.
well, I haven't seen myself side by side with them, right? Kind of
That's
like we
fair.
talked about earlier.
You've
Like
got that huge rib cage, though.
Yeah, like I'm going based on photos. So that would be where classic could um not I'm just gonna say not go my way, right? I'm just gonna say that term because I can't think of
Sure.
a better thing. Bodybuilding wise, I firmly believe I can get in there and mess
And
things
win.
up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it'll be interesting if we try to squeak into lightweights. The cap is 154 and a half. So historically, what's nice about it is a very big show. So historically, they start weigh-ins very early. So I could wake up like we'll go on the Thursday. It's just in Toronto. So we'll go on the Thursday and maybe Friday if I can weigh in at like 1 o'clock. Maybe we'll just fast or like keep it just super minimal till then, and then we have the whole day to carb up after just to kind of lock that in. But if the goal is the goal, it shouldn't matter the class, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. Is it even worth? Obviously, if it's a matter of just like not eating or like doing a little like
Yeah,
just eating after weigh-ins, like
yeah.
do it, right?
We've
But
done that and we can do that if I can't weigh in till 5 6 p.m. and that costs me a day of carving up, then it won't be worth it and we'll just send it like
yeah,
we would plan to. But if the opportunity's there, national lightweight champ kind of has always been in my head, so that would then put me in the overall and then we battle it out.
yeah,
So, yeah, so as far as like qualifying for that, I have a target, but like I said, if I'm 160 with glute striations like I was last year at 12 weeks out, I
yeah,
might just be like, hey, Carrie, we're going to drive to the city this weekend and bang out a show real quick and come home
yeah, yeah,
just to do it right. And that way, um, I don't have to worry about qualifying close to the show, which is what we would do, right? Is we would try to qualify within like a probably 4 5 6 week period of the show. Still not 100%, but if I can bang that out and then we can just solely lock in that last few weeks of like, hey, we're just we got one day.
yeah,
We're nailing it for one day. It's like my Olympia, you know what I mean? That's kind of where my head's at for it. So,
yeah,
and then after that, um, what else was there? Summer shredding kind of on my mind, just because there's a decent cash money prize. Um, trophies are cool and it's local. And then, the season would for sure end at Mr. America if I can last that long. But if we're going from beginning mid July to mid October, July, August, September, October, that's a stretch. I know historically I don't make it that long with how hard we push.
yeah,
So if I don't make it, I don't make it. Like I said earlier, not going to lose sleep over it. I'll go with the boys as a commentary trip like usual, have a blast. If I can be on stage, cool. If not, kind of like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, a fall season next time, then you do your Mr. America, you do your worlds because they're right within like an 8 week span, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, man.
So yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot about in my season about prioritization and what are the main objectives and kind of you know essentially walk through that so that your main objectives are basically the
The pro
WNBF
debut
pro debut and
and the
then
pro qualifier.
pro qualifier and potentially that IFBB pro card,
Yep.
up in Canada.
Yep. I would say those two are they're the two, right? Like I said, Mr. America would be the third, but the timeline, like if Mr. America was a little bit sooner, then obviously it would be a strong the third check box. You know what I mean?
You've already got foresight about what
Yeah,
your season after that would look like, which I think would include Worlds and Mr. America, I would
correct.
assume, right?
Yeah,
So,
I would echo what you said earlier, right? That fall, October, November, basically within an 8 week span, you can do a lot of cool stuff and get up there with the best of the best across different orgs, different federations. But who knows what the landscape's going to look like in 2027. Things are
oh,
changing
so hard.
so fast within natural bodybuilding right now, and to think 2 more years from now what things could look like, who knows, right? And we might do this podcast in 2 years and be talking about completely different events, right? So I'm
That is
uh
true.
I'm looking at next year being kind of like a coming of age season for me. 10 years. That's the other thing I want to quickly touch on. It's my 10-year competitive anniversary, which is really cool. Started competing in 2015. So 10 years of competing, which is one of the reasons I want to have a bunch of friends and family there and compete locally is I want that celebration of, you know, not to sound like this sounds so stupid, celebration of me, but like I want to celebrate what bodybuilding has done for me, what it's done for my family, for my business, the experiences I've had, the memories I've made, for you and James potentially to come to Toronto too. And who knows, man, if I walk out of that an IFBB pro and I've got everybody there, I might just be like, "Yo, we're done here. We're going to celebrate." Like that's my I get so much more out of bodybuilding than just the stage and the accolades and the wins and the trophies and blah 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 blah. Like would I love to do more shows after that? For sure, and if it works, cool. But if I have all the most important people in my life, like Cliff will be there too. You know what I mean? Like if that day ends with and new and I have
Yeah.
everybody there who I give a shit about, man, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like you want to talk about what this is. Like that's it. Like no more. Like I retire. I'm done. Like what I've stamped the biggest and best feeling that this could possibly give you. August 2nd next year.
Yeah.
Oof.
That's yeah.
Shit.
I and I
We're
can
gonna end it
I
here. I can't
completely can
anymore.
I completely can empathize with that
Yeah, man.
too. Because Ontario, I mean that's 100% the highlight of my bodybuilding career and possibly of my life. So like, yeah,
And that's what and possibly of your life. Like that's what this and we're
yeah,
talking about bodybuilding because that's what it is for us. This could be anything, but if you let it be that for you, have a healthy respect for it, have a healthy understanding of the things it can give you outside of these trophies. You know what I mean? Like I made a post about it yesterday. Like I have trophies upon trophies sitting in my office. I don't look at them. I don't stare at them, but when I can vividly see my first vision of you and James poking your head in the backstage room at OCB. I turned pro that day. I don't remember that. I remember you guys. I remember after I got my WMBF pro card, Carrie coming on stage and you guys hollering in the audience. That's what that's what I want most next year is everybody who I truly value and care about, not everybody, but the people that are so much for me to be there and be like, that's our dude. And he's doing what he loves and he's killing it. And we're here to be in that with him.
yeah. It just takes like winning a show, it amplifies it by like
A
15
billion.
times. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, let's end it here. We can't go any
Yeah,
higher
guys.
than this. We've
Yeah.
peaked.
We reached the top of the mountaintop, so
Yeah.
I think this is a really good chat.
Yeah, man, for sure. All right, people. Well, we appreciate you obviously supporting the podcast, supporting us as individuals, supporting Natty News. Obviously, if you like the video, like it, subscribe, follow us on Instagram. We've surpassed 25K, so we're just rolling to 50K now. We're skipping 30, 40. We're going right to 50K. So, also, as of this episode going live, the last voting category for the Natty News Daily Awards is going to be up. So if you are voting, please continue to do so. And then next week, we will have the head to head combat for the
Round two.
final round two. Yep, head to head combat of who's going to be the final recipients of the 2024 Natty News Daily
We
year
got
end
some good
awards.
battles next year.
There's
Next
some,
week.
yeah. We've seen some logistics behind the scenes, and it's going to be a cool vote next week. So thank you again, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next one.